Assalamu alaikum, students and all my viewers, and greetings to all. This is Shahbaz and I'm back here again with yet another lecture of my grammar series. So, people have been awaited for long for this all-awaited lecture number 4. So, without further ado, let us get started with the topic. So, starting the time with the name of Almighty Lord is the most beneficent and the most merciful. So as you can see, that's my lecture number 4 on your screen of the grammar series, and the topic for today that I have is noun, and not only that we are going to discuss noun, but we are going to discuss its types. So we have noun and its types to deal with. Now let us get started from the first point. The question arises out of the fact, what is noun? Now, in my preceding lecture of word classes, the very first lecture of grammar series, we have already discussed about noun in a very small order, as you can say. But today, let us talk about it in a more in a reviewed form, and then to talk about it in a descriptive form. So, as we have already discussed what noun is, let us review here once again. So, as we all know, noun is the name. Noun is the name of, any guesses? Of obviously any person, place, animal or thing. Like you heard in that first lecture from me, that noun is not a person, is not a place, is not an animal, is not a thing, but it is actually their names that become noun. So to review and to remind you once again, me as a person right here sitting before you is not noun, but my name is a noun. So myself is Fazal Shahbaz. So Fazal Shahbaz Khan is actually the noun because it's the name of a person. In this case, my name. So moving on. So this is what we already know. So the concept is simply, or the definition, what is widely known, keeping in view the explanation, as you can see before, in shape of any person, place, animal or thing. If we skip that, so the concept only remains to be that noun is the name. So this is what we know. So moving on, let us talk about its types a bit in detail. Now when it comes to the types, things are very confusing, and there are so many conditions and types around that make us feel a bit manipulated one way or the other. Like one school of thought says that there are 5 types of noun, another says no, 6. Some say there are 8, maybe more than 8. I mean, come on. Yes, there are some, say, variations and some other categories that we may have within the types of nouns, within the type of noun, but we do have only 5 types of noun. 5 types of noun, not to forget. So on your screen now, these are the 5 types. The first of which would be common noun, the second is proper noun, the third is compound noun, the fourth is concrete noun. Now that is one noun that you may have missed, or you may have studied, but like years ago, or I mean you may not have paid any attention to that. So that is what the most important type of noun is, to be the fourth of it. And last but not the least, very new to you once again, is mass noun. What is mass noun shall be discussed later. So let us talk about them in an individual base, on an individual base. Number 1, the first of which is common noun. Now, in other words, it can also be called a generic noun or simply generic noun. We'll see that later. But what common noun is? The concept says it is such a noun that denotes a class of objects, but not a particular individual. What do I mean by this? I mean, you may have different objects, or you may have a class of it on a simple individual base. What you can say in other words, like for example, let's take an example. There are some examples I have, 4 of which that I have placed before you. Say man, like I'm a man. Many of my viewers would be of the same category, but they are not exactly particularly referred to be as individuals. Like if I call myself man, and if somebody is a man, then it's like any a man, as you can see on the screen. If I'm referring city, city is a noun, but that can be any a city. There's no particular proper name attached to that. If I talk about doctor, then that means any a doctor. And in the same way, that is a reference for car, it means any a car. So here it means that we have so many nouns, but they are all in common because they are not actually referring to a particular individual or any particular individuals here. So they are noun, and they are because of that called common noun, since they are not referring any particular individual. So they are that's also called generic noun, as you can see. In other words, let's get down to the second type, that is proper noun. In other words, that's also called a specific noun. Why is it a specific? Let's find out its concept. So it is now such a noun that denotes a particular individual or a specific name. Now, a very contrary to a common noun. For example, now if I have these four examples placed before you. Now, there is a name, as you can see, Shahbaz, that's my name, very wonderful name, as you can see. And that is a reference of a specific person, a specific name, as you can see. If somebody calls Shahbaz, then I should be presentable. I would be there for that person. No other would really go to that very guy who has called upon that name. So, then, the name of the city, as you can see, Karachi. Now, it is a city, which makes it a common noun, but the name of that city here is now particularly referred, and that happens to be Karachi, where we are actually right now, and so this becomes a proper noun. Dr. Ziauddin is a specific doctor. A name has been attached to that, and in the same way, a type of, you can say, car, you can now clearly see the model number of that. The model of that is the car that belongs to Suzuki Cultus. The name of that very specific car or a specific brand of car would be Suzuki Cultus. So in that case, that becomes a proper noun. Now let's get down to the third kind in quite fastly. That's called compound noun, and in other words, that's also called combined noun, composite noun. Many other names can be said. So that's the third thing. So the concept says, it is such a noun that joins two or more words together to form a single word. Like we have more than one words and they are joined together in such a way that give you a single individual noun. For example, rainbow, handbag, showcase, and in another case, as you can see, mother-in-law. Now this is exceptional, where we can actually attach multiple words but not really mixing them, manipulating them together, but actually dividing them by the use of hyphen, as you can see in between all the three words. So as you can see, rainbow is a combination of rain and bow, that actually giving you different meanings when they are separated. Hand and bag, for the same reference, there are two different words as hand and bag separately. Show and case, again there are two different words, and in the last case, mother-in-law, there are three different words, as you can see, joined together by the use of hyphen. So either by the use of hyphen you can join things and make it a single word, a compound noun, or you can simply have words like handbag, rainfall, and hairfall, and many other such combined words. So that's the third type for you. Moving on. So let's talk about the fourth kind here. So this is concrete noun, and in other words, that's called tangible noun. The noun that is unshakable, that has some erectness into it, that has strongness into it. So the meanings of tangible could be non-shakeable and etc. So let's talk about it further. Let's take the concept of it. Now what do I mean by concrete noun here? Is that a noun that we can only sense, although we can sense by all five sensual elements that we have in shape of touching, smelling, hearing, seeing, as well as tasting. But sometimes we don't really have the taste of such concrete nouns that I'm going to talk about it, but except that tasting, we can simply go for the four of the senses, that is touching, smelling, hearing, and seeing. Sometimes we do go for testing also, so that makes us give get all five of the essential elements that can be used for concrete noun, which can be done for sensing. Let's find out in shape of an example. For instance, in shape of people, we do have brother, son, etc. Like, I can see my brother, I can touch him, I can hear what he says, and etc. Same can be done for my son. In shape of places, like beach, like house, etc. Like the beach where we go for enjoyment, or we book a hut near it and we stay in there, and then there is a house where we live in. So places like that where we can what can be touched, what can be simply seen, etc. House or beach may not be heard, or may not be tasted, and may not be smelled. So we can say that at a time one thing can be done only. Not on all the five elements are possible every time for a single concrete noun, but any one of which should be there. And in that case, the third of the portion that gives us things or objects, like in shape of mobile, the phone that we always carry, and then oranges, etc. In that case here, oranges can tell us that yes, it can be tasted. So because of this, we can say tasting can be done. So we do tasting as well. So that's a concrete noun, and that's the genuine concept of concrete noun. But that's not done for concrete noun right now, because it has some more subcategories, the first of which is coming for you. Concrete noun has collective noun as its first subcategory. Now, many of you may have studied collective noun as a separate type of noun. It's not the individual type of noun, what I should say. It's one of the variations to be found within concrete noun under advanced studies, when we go to study for that. So, concrete noun has the first subcategory in shape of collective noun. Then, what is collective noun? We all know. It is such a noun that is used to represent a group of people, a group of animals, or a group of thing as a whole, or as single whole. For example, flock, like when we have a bunch of elements joined together in a section, so that becomes flock. So flock, in one way or the other, a flock of birds, a flock of sheep, what can be said. Team, another collective noun, a team of no other but players. There are so many more examples what can be given to you, like um, army, the army, an army of soldiers, etc. So there are many more. The point is, collective noun gives you that single group name, what actually contains multiple other individuals within it. So that forms a group, or a group of people, or a group of animal or things, as you can see. So that's one, not to forget. That is the first subcategory of concrete noun. Moving on to its second and the last category. So we are still within concrete noun, not to forget. And this time we are talking about count noun. Now please keep one thing in view. Never say countable noun. The actual word in correct grammar gives us the idea of count noun only. Don't say countable. So count noun is what can be counted simply. So can be counted in both singular, that's one, as well as more than one, plural forms. So what you can simply count, in other words. For instance, book. What is book? A singular count noun. Some spoons. Now, as you can see, some attached to spoons gives us the feeling that there are more than one spoon. So the idea is it's a plural count noun. The chair. Now that is one singular chair, but the reference of the making it not just singular, but at the same time being singular, a proper count noun as well. As you can see the concept here. So the chair actually here becomes a singular. It is a singular, but proper count noun. So what made it proper is the attachment of an appropriate article. We can have articles attached to our count noun. Say for a common chair we can say a chair. For proper chair, as we have said, the chair. And if we are talking about more than one chairs and they are proper as well, so we can even say the chairs. So it doesn't matter. Articles are simply the type of determiners that can be attached to any count noun, which can be counted either in a singular order or in a plural order. So this sums up, and that's not to forget the second category, the second subcategory of concrete noun. Let us now talk about the last type of this eventful lecture, and this time it is mass noun. Now the topic or the name may be new to my viewers, obviously, but this is a kind of a name that I would want to share it with you, because in other words that's also called non-count noun. You heard it right. So either you call it non-count noun or you call it uncount noun. As you can see, I have used hyphen for actually separating non and count here, but we can even remove hyphen for the spelling in case if you're wondering. So in other words, non-count or uncount noun or uncounted noun, what can be said? Never say uncountable noun. Beware. Now the same fifth kind of noun has two categories, and I'm going to talk about it straight away. First and foremost, let's keep one thing in view, that non-count noun, or in other words mass noun, is exactly the opposite of count noun. What we have so far studied in count noun just right before this slide, and can really give us the reminder once we are talking about non-count here. So this is what we can see, what we have counted in it, what we can count in it, and inside non-count, let's find out what I have here for you. So there are two categories attached in mass noun, in the type of mass noun, and the first of which is on the screen before you. So that is material noun. So the definition says it is a noun that can only be measured, but cannot be counted. So not to forget, this is our first subcategory, and let's take an example for that. For instance, flour, water, sugar, coal, wheat, gold. Now any of which that you have seen on the screen right here before you can simply only be measured, can be weighted in liter, in kilogram, etc., but can not be counted. So all of these nouns are hereby never counted, and that is why they are called material noun. So in other words, material nouns are those nouns which can never be counted but can only be measured. And the second category of mass noun, and that's called abstract noun. Now the concept says it's almost the anti, as you can see, of the similar type of a noun that we once have talked about it already beforehand. So I'll tell you about that. So that's the definition, as you can see before you. It is a noun that we cannot sense by any of the five sensual elements, either touching, smelling, hearing, seeing, or even tasting. We can't use any of the sense here, but we can simply feel and imagine. So let's find out. So that's not to forget the second subcategory and the last category of a mass noun. For instance, wisdom, intelligence, dishonesty, beauty. Now any of the word that you've seen on the screen before you can simply be felt and can simply be thought of. Like, I can't have a person whose name is wisdom, who has two eyes, two ears, one nose, and can appear like a long and tall human being. No, not at all. I don't have a friend whose name is intelligence. I don't have a buddy who is carrying his name as to be dishonesty or beauty. No, they cannot be visible. They are always invisible, but they can only be felt and they can only be imagined. So any of these words and many more words like that, once you have it around you, so they are, in other words, can never be seen, can never be touched, can never be heard, can never be tasted, etc., can never be smelt, but can only be felt or imagined, as you can see on the screen. So such nouns become abstract noun and the part of mass noun. So like I said, abstract noun, in other words, is also called non-material noun. That's the anti of material noun. So that's also called non-material noun, in other words. So that is all what I have in my lecture this time. Until next time, it is goodbye.